So, like I shared in the lecture, is merchandising encompasses all those activities involved in buying and selling products, and those major responsibilities for merchandising professionals are to locate, purchase products with the customer's preferences in mind, and sell those products for a profit. So, we're going to explore some of the positions that complete those tasks. All right. So, one of the things that most of you may not want to hear, but the road to merchandise buyer is paved with a bunch of entry level jobs that have a lot of tasks to do. And the first one is a merchandise trainee, right, or a merch assistant. This is where most people get their start in the buying world. So a merch assistant oftentimes goes through a merchandise training program that's designed for new hires, interns, college recruits, folks that have just shown skills or desire to be in merchandising, and prepare them for their first real assignment as an assistant buyer. And it's a lot of on-the-job training and gaining the necessary skills for all the analysis you're going to do. So coming out of that management training program, one of the first jobs that you may get is an allocator, right? So have you ever thought about how the stuff gets to the store? Like, why did they send 3 size larges, 1 medium, and that black shirt, right? So the allocator is responsible for planning and managing deliveries from the vendors that were ordered by the buyers and sending them to locations. One of the other entry-level positions in a large company is a planner. And the planner works in collaboration with the buyer to develop the sales forecasts and inventory plans and spending budgets for merchandise to minimize unsold good and to achieve the retailer's sales and profit objectives. The planner works hand in hand with the buyer and the allocator to ensure that the right number of items, the merchandise assortment, which includes, size, color, price points, reaches the store. So these are the first 2 entry-level jobs that many folks get on their road to buyer, right? So an allocator, planner, and then they move on to assistant buyer. An assistant buyer works directly for a buyer of a department or a group of related departments, okay? And assistant buyers work in part with the allocator and with the planner to develop the plans and the open to buy, which is how much money you have to spend, and to manage the inventory. Generally, they take cues from the buyer, and depending on the company, they may go to market with the buyer as well. In terms of experience, it's usually 2 to 3 years of retail industry experience, right? So that could include retail sales. It could be accounting or budgeting. Those things are extremely helpful. And then, as we started with at the beginning of this video, many companies have executive training programs or merchandise training programs that will help you get your foot in the door. So what are the personal characteristics that you have to have an assistant buyer, right? You just need to be able to understand fashion, have a little bit of fashion history knowledge, have a sense of what's fashionable and what the customer wants and needs, so understanding who the target customer is. And you should have a strong analytical background. The most challenging thing is being an assistant buyer is just really your responsibility includes doing anything the buyer doesn't want to do. Okay, so now let's talk about the coveted position that many of you are thinking that you want, and that is fashion buyer, retail buyer, fashion merchandising, retail merchandising. Those are all one and the same. And that person is responsible for all the product purchases for a company in particular. And it's much more than someone who just enjoys the thrill of shopping or has a good fashion sense. So buyers are responsible for all of the product purchases for a company or for a particular department within a company within a certain budget. When I worked for Ralph, I worked in the women's knit and sweater division for the outlet stores. And our responsibility was to monitor trends and to determine what items our customers were going to buy. So it required a lot of travel to help us understand our customers' preferences. The ultimate goal of a buyer is to recognize trends that fit within a target market and taste, price of your customers, right? And to acquire merchandise that reflects those trends and that translate into a profitable business for a retailer, right? So buyers, we select products from designers and manufacturers and wholesalers for their customers. So what's the educational background, right? A bachelor's degree, typically in a field of fashion merchandising, retailing, retail merchandising, sometimes folks marketing. My background was in history, but my experience ultimately led me into a buying office. But because I had that foundation in business administration and retail selling, the actual degree I had wasn't as important. So experience is almost as important as education, being a buyer, right? So you'll probably have had at least 5 years in one of the other positions that we talked about. So assistant buyer, planner, allocator before you get to buyer. And retail sales experience also is really helpful because you really need to understand customer buying behavior. And that's something that you'll never learn unless you've dealt with customers directly. So what are the characteristics of successful buyers, right? They have to love fashion, have a knowledge of fashion history and trends, as well as an understanding of the fashion industry as a whole, right? But the most important thing is they need to have good analytical, mathematical, and computer skills, specifically Microsoft Excel. We used to joke at Ralph Lauren, they used to call me the queen of the spreadsheet. And I'm like, if I can get it in Excel, I can make the numbers do whatever I want them to do. Successful buyers are good negotiators. They possess excellent communication and organizational skills. They're detail-oriented and they're able to deal well with deadlines. This position does require a lot of hard work and long hours. It is not a Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 job. And it takes a special type of person that can do that over a sustained period of time for the length of a career. So what are the challenges, right? The challenges for any buyer is to excel and just maintain profitability or growth in their department just by making good buying decisions for their target customers. And because numbers tell the story, buyers are under pressure to reach and surpass sales volume goals and their planned inventory levels. So now I'm going to talk about the last two things, positions we're going to talk about are the bosses of the buyer, right? So the first is called a divisional merchandise manager, that is also known as a DMM. And that person provides leadership for the buying staff of a division or a group of departments. And they coordinate teamwork amongst the buyers and delegate responsibilities, oftentimes to the assistant buyers, allocators, and planners. So DMMs develop merchandising strategies in support of the total company. They manage, coach, and develop the buying staff, so all of the buying staff. They, monitor an environment that promotes the development of a strong team, and they set the overall strategy and direction for their division. The last position we're going to talk about is the general merchandise manager, or the GMM. And the GMM is the boss of the buyer's boss, right? So the GMM's job is to lead and manage the buyers of all the divisions. They manage and coach and develop the buying staff, and they create an environment that promotes professional development. They develop buying and selling strategies that will hopefully maximize business performance and profitability. So what are the qualifications for the MMs, right? The DMM and the GMM. They're generally the same. They will have a bachelor's degree. More than likely, they'll have a master's degree in a fashion-related marketing or business field. They'll have a minimum of 10 years experience, either as a buyer, retail manager, division manager. They'll definitely have that experience. And, they may even have extensive store experience. All right, so now that you've seen some of the careers that are available, scroll down and look at what you can make. I'm going to show you the money.